I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you've won the ultimate historical lottery.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
So you are born into a powerful royal family. Like, think about what that actually looks like for a minute.
Right.
You've got endless wealth, ultimate authority. Literally, your every whim is catered to from the exact moment you take your first breath.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like an absolute dream, right?
Exactly. But what if I told you that winning that specific lottery is actually a historical death sentence?
A death sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Today, we are unpacking a really fascinating 2023 essay by an author named Sufeng.
Right.
It's titled The Revelation of Not Born into a Royal Family in the Next Life. And our mission in this deep dive is to explore this author's argument that humanity's absolute deepest desires, things like, wealth, royalty, fame, are actually historical traps.
They're traps. Yeah, and the premise of this text, it completely flips the script on basically everything society conditions us to want out of life.
It really does.
The essay argues that the very things we spend our entire lives striving to achieve are precisely the things that guarantee our destruction. So it is a really stark warning about the hidden costs of ambition.
It is. So, let's start by looking at the literal meaning of that title, right? Not being born into a royal family in the next life.
Right, which sounds crazy to most people.
Right. But the text dismantles this deeply ingrained illusion we have that proximity to power equals safety.
Mm-hmm.
It points out that if you actually look through the historical record, countless individuals who were born into these royal families met incredibly tragic fates.
Oh, yeah. We are talking about brutal massacres, complete annihilation of entire bloodlines.
And it wasn't just like the distant cousins either.
No, exactly. The text makes it clear that this danger isn't just a risk for the people on the fringes of the family who might be, seen as disposable.
Right.
Even the individuals who successfully ascend to the throne, like the ones holding the absolute highest seat of power, they rarely meet peaceful ends.
You see fathers and sons violently vying for control.
Exactly. You see family members turning against each other, siblings completely torn apart by paranoia. The very structure of that power demands a constant, really violent defense of it.
Now, there's this one detail in the text that really stuck with me regarding that violence.
Oh, about the exiled royals.
Yes. It notes that if a royal family is ousted from power, and they are only imprisoned or exiled instead of being entirely slaughtered, that outcome is actually considered a result of their, quote, past blessings.
I know. Just let the gravity of that sink in for a second.
Having your entire life stripped away, losing your home and being thrown into a dungeon for the rest of your days.
Just presented as the absolute best case scenario.
Right. It implies that to just avoid a violent death in those circumstances requires this massive accumulation of cosmic goodwill.
And what's fascinating here is how the text expands this danger outward. Because it doesn't just stay within the royal bloodline.
Oh, right. The staff.
Exactly. If you are born into a certain family, or even if you just work for them, the staff, the servants, the cooks, you are completely implicated.
Entire households are massacred simply for being associated with the wrong people at the wrong time.
Just for being there, yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because when you describe it that way, I can't help but picture power as a bomb rather than a shield.
A bomb. That's a great way to put it.
Right. Because we usually think of power as a fortress. Like, if you were behind the thick walls of the castle, you're protected from the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
But this text portrays it as an explosive device with a massive blast radius.
Yeah, a blast radius.
If you stand too close to it, even if your only job is, like, pouring the wine or sweeping the floors, you are standing right in the blast zone when that inevitable regime change goes off.
That analogy gets right to the core of the author's point. The blast radius of power, it does not discriminate based on your job title.
The new regime can't risk a loyalist surviving.
Exactly. So the cook faces the exact same fate as the king. And the essay actually explicitly connects this historical dynamic to modern everyday structures, too.
Right. It's not just ancient history.
No, not at all. It states that joining a political party, a religious group, or an organized crime syndicate carries the exact same risk. The mechanics are identical.
Wow.
Yeah, if that organization falls from grace or faces some kind of crackdown, imprisonment or worse is inevitable for everyone involved.
So in places where power struggles are fierce, just standing with the wrong person or formally joining the wrong side has dreadful, totally unavoidable consequences.
Absolutely.
But I mean, if the blast radius is so obvious, if history is just one long, repetitive list of powerful groups collapsing and taking everyone down with them, why does humanity keep eagerly walking right into the danger zone?
Well, because we are constantly seduced by the illusion of safety in numbers.
Safety in numbers, right?
There is a really deep psychological allure to what those powerful groups offer. Resources, status, a sense of belonging.
We convince ourselves that we can control the blast radius.
Exactly. Or that we'll be smart enough to predict exactly when the bomb will go off so we can just step away in time.
We always believe our specific group is the historical exception.
We really do. But the blast radius of a royal family or a political party is ultimately man-made, right? It's
Yeah.
human violence.
Which brings us to the next major shift in the essay.
Right. What happens when the group you are associated with faces a threat that isn't political, but completely out of human control?
So the author scales this concept of association up to massive, uncontrollable events.
Yes. This is where the author introduces the concept of collective destiny, and it bridges the gap between human conflict and natural disaster.
Starting with war, right?
Right. So the text asks the reader to deeply consider the reality of soldiers on both sides of a battlefield. It points out that these individuals are beloved children of mothers, they're cherished husbands, respected fathers in their communities.
Right. As individuals, they are fundamentally good people.
Exactly. Yet they engage in mutual, horrific slaughter.
Because they've put on a uniform.
Precisely. By putting on that uniform, they are swept up in the collective destiny of the group they belong to.
They inherit the enemies of the nation.
Right, and their individual morality is completely subsumed by the group's trajectory.
And then the text moves to natural disasters, which, I mean, this is where the tone gets incredibly heavy.
It really does.
It focuses on the suddenness of mass tragedies, like earthquakes killing hundreds of thousands in an instant, a sudden flood completely dividing the living and the dead in a single village within a matter of moments, or an airplane crash making hundreds of people just vanish without a trace. The text attributes these massive, seemingly random events to three specific things.
Right. Timing, luck, and destiny.
Timing, luck, and destiny.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the author is directly challenging our modern, deeply held belief in total individual autonomy.
We desperately want to believe that our fate is entirely in our own hands.
We do, but when an earthquake strikes, or when an airplane loses its engines, your individual merit, your work ethic, your personal morality, none of that saves you.
Right.
In those moments, you share the exact fate of the crowd you happen to be standing in.
Now, the author drives this concept home with a parable that is honestly pretty jarring to read.
Oh, the sinking ship.
Yeah. I want to lay out the exact situation it describes for you listening. So, there's a criminal on a sinking ship. The water is rushing in, the ship is going down, and the criminal complains to the greatest creator. He looks up at the sky and asks, "Why? To punish just me, did you have to drown over 200 people?"
And a distant voice from the heavens responds.
Right, it says, "It wasn't an easy task to gather over 200 people who were destined to perish, was it?"
It's a very provocative, really heavy piece of imagery.
I have to push back on this a little, though.
Sure.
Because hearing that 200 people were, quote, destined to perish just to fulfill some kind of cosmic quota is a really tough pill to swallow.
Oh, absolutely.
How should you, the listener, process this? I mean, is the author literally saying we have absolutely no free will when it comes to tragedy, and that some punitive force is just grouping doomed people together?
Well, this raises a really important question about the mechanics of the author's philosophy. It's a tension that sits right at the center of the text.
Yeah.
But I don't read this parable as a denial of free will or like a story about a punitive god meeting a quota.
Okay, then how do you read it?
Rather, it's an illustration of the compounding metaphysical weight of our associations. The author seems to be suggesting that large groups of people generate their own kind of gravity.
Huh. Gravity.
Yeah. When you board a ship, you are intertwining your individual life trajectory with the unseen currents, the timing, luck, and destiny of everyone else on board.
So it's less about a god punishing people and more about the natural consequences of the crowds we join.
Exactly. The text implies that if a large group of people carrying heavy burdens of negative destiny or, bad luck gather in one place, that concentration of energy attracts disaster.
Wow.
The ship sinks under the weight of their collective fate. So the free will isn't in stopping the ship from sinking once it hits the iceberg.
Right.
The free will was exercised the moment you decided to board that specific ship with that specific crowd in the first place.
That makes a lot of sense. The danger isn't just the physical water. The danger is the crowd you decided to sail with.
Precisely.
Oh.
You are exposing yourself to the sum total of their destinies.
But if the crowds we join and the ships we board are so inherently dangerous, we have to look at what is actively luring us onto these doomed vessels. Right.
And that is exactly where the text transitions from diagnosing the overarching problem to unmasking the root causes of our behavior.
Right.
The author outlines 6 human pursuits, 6 major illusions that we blindly chase.
The 6 illusions.
Yeah, and the argument is that society conditions us to look only at the shiny surface of these pursuits, completely ignoring the dark, inevitable reality hiding just beneath.
The author breaks these down into 6 specific illusions, and what's really striking is how they pair up conceptually.
They do?
Let's look at power and wealth first, because we typically view both of those as the ultimate forms of freedom.
We do, yeah.
But the text says, beneath the glory of power lurk invisible dangers and threats of violence, which connects perfectly back to that blast radius we discussed earlier.
Exactly.
But then it states that beneath the glimmer of wealth hide endless servility and misery.
That phrase, endless servility, is such a counterintuitive way to describe wealth.
Right.
Because we assume wealth means you don't have to serve anyone ever again.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting, because I immediately viewed that through the lens of modern golden handcuffs.
That's a great connection.
Yeah, like people hustle, grind, and sacrifice their entire youth to get rich. They want the massive estate, the luxury vehicles, the complex investment portfolios. But once they finally acquire all of it, they realize they've just become full-time servants to maintaining it.
Right, you are serving the property taxes.
Yes. You are serving the stress of market fluctuations. You are serving the lawyers and accountants required to protect it all.
Yeah.
And perhaps most exhaustingly, you are serving the social status you now have to continuously uphold. Like, your entire identity becomes tied to managing the illusion of wealth for other people.
That is a very grounded way to understand the mechanism the author is describing. The accumulation of material wealth fundamentally alters your relationship with the world.
How is so?
Well, you go from experiencing life to just guarding assets. You don't own the wealth owns you. You become a servant to your own possessions.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It really is.
Now let's look at the next pair, beauty and fame. The text says, underneath the allure of beauty lies endless bitterness, endurance, and looming danger. And beneath the radiance of fame hide indescribable impurities and corruption.
So the mechanism behind beauty breeding bitterness is really about the fight against entropy.
The fight against time.
Exactly. Physical beauty, as defined by societal standards, is entirely fleeting. It is a depreciating asset.
Right.
Think about the sheer endurance required, the surgeries, the treatments, the diets, to maintain physical beauty against the natural, unstoppable flow of time.
It's constant.
It is a war you are mathematically guaranteed to lose. And tying your self-worth to a battle you cannot win is the exact recipe for the deep bitterness the author mentions.
That makes total sense. And fame operates on a similar level of compromise. The text points to impurities and corruption hiding beneath fame.
Oh, absolutely.
You see this play out in the public eye constantly. The brighter the public spotlight, the darker the shadows it casts on a person's private life.
Right.
Fame requires the total consumption of your private self by the public. You have to constantly alter your personality, hide your flaws, and basically perform a character just to sustain the attention.
Yeah.
It corrupts the authentic self because you are no longer a person, you are a product.
Which leads directly into the final 2 illusions, pleasure and excitement. The text warns that underneath the extravagance of pleasure lie numerous tiers of helplessness and lurking crises. And similarly, beneath the clamor of excitement lie countless disasters, misfortunes, and despair.
It sounds like a critique of the hedonic treadmill.
Completely.
This idea that a life devoted entirely to chasing the next high, the next thrill, or the next dopamine hit inevitably masks a deep, unresolved emptiness.
It does. When your baseline for a good life requires constant external stimulation, whether that's extravagant parties, extreme sports, or just relentless entertainment, you are always living on the edge of a crash.
Right.
The tears of helplessness occur when the thrill inevitably fades and you are left alone with yourself. The author is really suggesting that excitement is just noise we use to drown out our internal despair.
So the author's overarching warning across all 6 of these illusions is singular and pretty blunt.
Do not be misled by surface glamour.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Walking toward these things, power, wealth, pleasure, beauty, fame, excitement, guarantees inevitable strife and misfortune. They are the shiny objects that lure us onto the sinking ship.
It is a profound, almost devastating critique of basically everything modern society tells us to value.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at any billboard or if you spend 5 minutes scrolling through social media, the entire ecosystem is exclusively selling you those 6 illusions as the definition of a successful life.
Exactly. Society says, run towards the wealth, fight for the power, do whatever it takes to get famous.
Right.
So if the author is arguing that doing those things is basically walking onto a battlefield with a target on your back,
Right.
where on earth are we supposed to go?
Good question.
If we aren't supposed to walk toward any of the things we've been taught to want, what is the alternative?
Well, the author attempts to offer the reader a highly actionable philosophical escape hatch.
Okay.
The text prescribes a cure rooted in a very specific concept, stating, the reverse is the movement of Tao.
The movement of Tao. Let's dig into how that actually works in this context.
So Tao broadly translates to the fundamental nature of the universe, or the underlying natural order of things. The author's logic is that if human society is rushing madly toward wealth, fame, and power, and that collective rush consistently leads to historical destruction, then society is fundamentally out of step with nature.
That tracks.
Therefore, aligning with the natural order, the Tao, means going in the exact opposite direction of the crowd.
So if we use an analogy, it's like society is a massive river rushing towards a treacherous waterfall of wealth and fame.
I like that.
Everyone is in the water, swimming frantically, fighting each other to get to the front of the pack. But swimming harder isn't the natural order, it's just fighting the current of reality.
Exactly.
Movement of Tao isn't about swimming backwards up the river. It's about getting out of the river entirely and walking quietly on the bank. It's about lateral moves, not backward ones.
That captures the mechanism perfectly. It's an exit strategy.
Okay.
And the text gives very explicit instructions on how to execute this. It says to intentionally walk towards places where crowds are sparse.
Sparse crowds.
To actively seek auspiciousness, brightness, simplicity, tranquility, joy, happiness, freedom, bliss, and the path of nature.
So a lot of really quiet, peaceful things.
Exactly. The promise of the text is that by doing this, by stepping away from the dense concentrations of human ambition, you can minimize disasters and unexpected blows in your life.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, in a practical sense? When the text says to walk towards places where crowds are sparse, I immediately wonder how literal that is.
Right.
Like, do we all need to sell our belongings, move into the deep woods, and become off-the-grid hermits to avoid the blast radius?
Well, while moving to an isolated cabin in the woods is certainly one literal interpretation, the philosophy can be applied much more practically as a psychological and emotional shift.
Okay. So you don't have to sell everything.
No, you don't necessarily have to abandon modern civilization to step out of the crowd. Walking where crowds are sparse in a digital, hyper-connected age means detaching yourself from the collective hysteria of modern ambition.
Oh, I see.
It's about opting out of the mental rat race and the outrage cycles that consume basically everyone else.
Like, you can still live in a bustling city and hold down a job,
Yeah.
but you fundamentally refuse to base your self-worth on the same stressors that are eating your neighbors alive.
Exactly. When your peers are mortgaging their futures to project an image of wealth, willingly putting on those golden handcuffs of servility, you choose the path of simplicity.
Right.
When everyone else is engaged in fierce, cutthroat power struggles at your company, actively exposing themselves to the blast radius of corporate politics, you choose tranquility.
You just step back.
Yeah, you still do your work, but you don't tie your soul's value to the corporate ladder.
It's a fascinating pivot by the author. They take what initially sounds like an incredibly bleak, fatalistic view of history and destiny and attempt to offer a deeply personal reclamation of peace.
It really is empowering in a strange way.
By reducing your exposure to the things that inevitably cause strife, by stepping away from the dense crowds chasing illusions, you are minimizing your chances of getting caught in their collective downfall.
Exactly.
You are choosing not to board the sinking ship before it even leaves the harbor.
It requires a massive reprogramming of what you consider valuable, but the text argues it is the only true path to safety.
Well, let's bring all of these concepts together. We started this deep dive by looking at the terrifying historical reality, hiding behind the ultimate fantasy of royal power.
Right.
We saw how power doesn't actually protect you. It acts as a bomb with a deadly blast radius that inevitably takes down anyone standing too close, from the king to the cook.
We then examine the mechanics of collective destiny and how our individual fates are deeply intertwined with the groups we choose to join, whether in war, in political organizations, or even in the face of natural disasters. The people we surround ourselves with determine the metaphysical weight of the ship we are sailing on.
And we unmask the true nature of those six shiny illusions: power, wealth, pleasure, beauty, fame, and excitement. We explored the mechanisms behind them, like the golden handcuffs of wealth, the corrupting nature of fame, and the bitter, unwinnable war to maintain beauty,
We saw how these are simply traps that lure us into danger.
all of which culminated in the ultimate wisdom the text attempts to impart. The reverse is the movement of Tao.
Right.
Finding true safety does not come from conquering the crowd or reaching the top of the hierarchy. It comes from quietly stepping away from it, seeking the sparse, simple, and tranquil paths that align with nature.
Which brings us to the very final line of the essay.
Yes.
After laying out this entire map of human folly and the hidden dangers of ambition, the author turns directly to the reader and asks one simple, piercing question.
I would pose it directly to you now listening to this. So, where do you intend to be born in the next life?
It is a question that completely reframes the entire concept of human aspiration.
It really does. And I want to leave you with one final thought to build on that question as you go about your day. If the things that society loudly calls success are actually just invitations to disaster, how might completely redefining what success means to you today break the cycle of misfortune for your future?
Hmm.
Think about it. If you step out of the blast radius, if you intentionally stop chasing the crown and the crowd right now, what kind of genuinely peaceful legacy could you leave behind instead? Because maybe winning the lottery doesn't mean getting the throne. Sometimes winning the ultimate lottery just means having the quiet freedom to walk away from the castle entirely.